Welcome to the Riverview Systems Group podcast series. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to the next episode of the Riverview Systems Group podcast series. Here at RSG, we are well known for superior event support and production. However, a division of our company that is just as important would be our installs and integration team. With Riverview branded vehicles going out every day to locations far and wide here in California, our team of professionals continues to head out on jobs big and small, performing permanent installation projects that are of such high standards we never see a stop in the demand for Riverview teams to do what they do best. But I should not speak to this when I can go straight to the top of that team. I'd like to welcome Todd, Vrzal, and Steve Soto. These gentlemen are the leaders of this team, and I am thrilled to have them on the show. Welcome, Todd. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having us. It's kind of cool to actually sit down and actually make time to sit down and chat a little bit about what we do. We kind of roll under the radar and keep busy, and it's good to kind of share what's going on.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we are so well known for live events, production, that whole kind of thing. But if you walk back into the warehouse, you see the vans, and they're constantly coming in and going out. And those are like the unsung heroes, as I say. I had a chance to go over and chat for a minute with Winnie and with Adrian last week, put up a little video of those guys getting a couple of racks together and ready for a project. So, it's good stuff. So let's start at the beginning. Tell us your story of how you came to Riverview, how long it's been, so on and so forth. Todd, let's start with you.
Well, thank you, Tim. How long have you got? I guess would be the best way to put that.
Well, you know what? This is why we're sitting here, and we put some time aside. Right. So I'll put the ball in your court.
Perfect. Well, yeah, it all started back in 1990. So October of last year was my 35th year here.
Wow. So you began when I was 5. I'm just kidding. Far from it. That's
wow. That makes me feel.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. I was 21. So no,
okay,
I'm not that lucky. The bones are creaking. Anyway, back to you.
Yeah. No, but it was meant to be, I guess, because I actually knew of Riverview Systems Group because I worked in a company that was just across the court from there, which was Morpheus Lights. I worked with Mike Noble, who's still our service manager here there. And funny story, because we knew of Riverview because when they would bring their live rig in to test, we would hear them from our little corner of the court, blasting Rush throughout the entire facility. Wow. Nice. And everybody
Even
would kind of look at each other going, where's that coming from? Oh, that's Riverview.
Great.
Okay. So, that was my first introduction to them. But anyway, as short story longer, we had a little bit of a layoff at Morpheus, and so I updated my resume and took it across the court. And lo and behold, 2 days later, got a call from Chris and Evan, and they explained to me that they were trying to update their installation department, so it was kind of a perfect fit. And the rest, I guess, as they say, is history.
Nice. It kind of reminds me a little bit of how I came in. It's kind of like the hair club for men. I was a client.
Right.
If it was hair club for men, I get fired because you look at this haircut, it just ain't working. But I worked for Apple from 2000 to 2008, and that's how I met you guys. And then went to Cisco on the same kind of thing. And eventually I realized I needed to go back to where it all began, because in high school I was in stage crew and loved it, all the production thing, went into college, so on and so forth. So after being in marketing and being the client for 12, 13 years, I gave Evan a call and said, hey, do you have any tips on how to get into, the behind the scenes, into the industry here.
Sure.
Not even thinking that he would say what he did say, which is, well, why don't you just come work here? And a week later, here I was. So it's kind of funny. It's kind of a theme. So,
yeah, right.
But so you were literally working just across the road, or were you in the same building?
It was kind of a court.
Okay.
And so we were like a couple buildings over, and I basically did the manufacturing and the testing for the robotic lights at Morpheus Lighting. And like I said, Mike Noble and I knew of each other. From working at the same company, but we were like formally introduced, as I was saying, at a Sam Kinison concert at the Circle Star Theater, where we became friends and started chatting. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't know Mike was touring with Morpheus and for all of their road shows and stuff like that. But when he was at home, he would work in the service department at Riverview. I didn't even know that when I dropped off my resume. But when they called me up and said, "Hey, we'd like to talk to you," they're like, "Mike says you're a nice guy." And I was like, "And you believe Mike Noble, huh?"
And that works for us.
And that's actually, okay, well, let's chat. So yeah, I didn't even know at the time that he was working here, but when I first started out, that was kind of my side gig, was helping him out in service. Nice. And doing that.
Now, for people that are listening from afar, the Circle Star Theater was a famous location in San Carlos.
Yes.
And it was around up in, I don't know, it probably disappeared about 15 years ago?
At least
20 years ago, something like that. And the Circle Star Theater, literally, it was a round stage that continued to spin at a slow rate, but you'd be looking at the front of the performer, and 15 minutes later, you're looking at the back of the performer, and so on and so forth. I remember seeing James Brown there, which was amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. I didn't get to go down there that much because San Carlos was a bit of a trek for me when I was a kid from San Francisco, but I did see James Brown there, so that was pretty neat. Well, Steve, let's go over to you. Let's hear your story. When did you come here? How did it all happen?
Well, in the early 90s, I was a music and sports programmer for a venue in downtown San Jose, and we had brought in Riverview, specifically Todd, and installs to maintain equipment, and if something went wrong, they would come out and roll out their big dual 15-inch PAS subwoofers, or maybe it was dual 18s. I don't remember. It was dual 18s. They would roll them in because we were always popping the subs in that place. And so then eventually I reached out to Todd. I said, "Hey, you guys have any additional work going on?" He said, "Well, I could use some help at Armadillo Willie's." And I'm like, "What is that? What is Armadillo Willie's? Am I going to be, feeding animals, or what's going on?"
Great barbecue.
Yeah, so it's a great barbecue place. And again, this was early 90s, and then went out there and we installed a system. We had an agreement or partnership or handshake with a couple of different folks that came together to install sound systems in these types of venues, restaurants specifically. And so that was my first gig and with Riverview, and we did the permanent install there, and then we moved on. I remember installing some really heavy monitors in certain places, certain restaurants, cafes, some churches, and then I kind of that was the install side of the world, and I noticed that there was a completely different side of the world, which was the event side. And I was slightly intimidated, and I was like, "Oh, what do you guys do?" So I started poking my head out in the warehouse, and that's when I started learning lighting, audio, video, and so back in '95, I just kept showing up.
That's how you do it.
And I just kept showing up, and eventually I was in charge of check-in, which consisted of the equipment coming back from an event, being checked in,
sure,
and everything would come to me. It would be lighting, video, audio, whatever. If it electricity was flowing through it, it came into that check-in area, and that's how I kind of grasped every little bit of technology. And then So, then after that, we end up traveling the world. You see some of these pictures on the wall, and trade shows and events. Just amazing experience.
So you did some event support.
I did quite a bit of event support. Yeah,
Okay.
I did some
All
install stuff, and then events said, "No, you're coming with us."
Sure.
Of
course,
and,
yeah.
And eventually,
All hands on deck.
yeah, eventually, for the most part, ran audio and was an A1 for many years with corporate events and trade shows and all sorts of events. Take care of the audio portion of that. And then, that's how I came into this
Nice.
world. And then transitioning over to installs.
Yeah, we stole them back in 2008.
Yeah, there was
2008.
2006 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
Oh, wow.
2006 or 7.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had a large integration come through, and they said, "Would you like to jump in on this?" And I said, "Well, sure, why not?"
Nice.
And that's where the event side started, and working hand in hand with all sorts of trades, general contractors, all of that, and just absorbing as much as I could doing that. And I haven't left install since.
Great.
There have been some requests of, hey, what are you doing this week?
Right, they still borrow him on occasion.
Yeah.
It's not exclusive.
Yeah.
We had to sign that paperwork too.
that was in the rider.
Yeah, but to be able to see both sides and how,
Sure.
I know. I mean, I'm on the events email list, so I see what comes through, and it's good to see the nice mentions from certain clients come through. It's kind of I like to see that kind of stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. We're going to do a couple of these episodes, and we'll dive into highlighting some of those projects down the line. But wrapping up for this one, how have you seen the department evolve? I mean, obviously, when Todd, you started, it was a bit smaller. How many guys did we have on staff that were part of installs, so to speak?
This one.
Just you. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing was, back when the company was still young,
The red truck.
The red truck, yes, the beast on the road.
We had a big red truck.
Big red truck, yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Chris's old Dodge truck.
Yeah.
Originally, I mean, we all did a little bit of everything.
Right.
I mean, when I started, there was not maybe 10, 12 other people. And so if they needed help on a show, then I would go do that. If I needed help on installs, I would, call people in. So it was basically just me myself when it started. Within probably about 3 years, we grew to a crew of like 4 people. There was 4 people on our immediate staff, and from there, it's just kind of blossomed into what it is today.
Amazing. Wow. Nice. Well, I think this is good for this one. It was great to sit down with you guys. We're acting like we're gonna, get up and walk away, but we're not. But for the time being, thanks to everybody out there for listening to our next episode. Be sure to tune in and hear some war stories and stories on the road and some highlights that these guys have seen Riverview installs and integrations take part of. I know that it's, like I said, it's just this beast that is constantly running that unless you know about it, you don't know about it, which is kind of cool. So this is one of the reasons why I want to shine a light on it, highlight it, because it's a big part of the company.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Tim.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
Well, listen, like I said, tune back in. Look for the next episode coming soon. And for everybody listening, we appreciate your time. And we'll talk to you again very soon. Cheers.
Cheers.